Okay, I got the last question. Okay. I'm Ed Kendall. I've been a member of the school board now going on 27 years here in Nashville, and I represent a district that's predominantly a disadvantaged area, except Governor York, the capital is in my district.
I told him I get a complaint.
You told me you were going to call me and complain. But my question, and I don't know how fair it is, I think it's fair, but in my almost 27 years, I think parent involvement with the kids, especially the kids, Secretary Duncan, that you were talking about with dropouts, is extremely important. And I'm just wondering how we can actually get more parent involvement with the child, not necessarily with the school, from a state and local and national level. And my second part of that has to do with getting a culture that everybody believes, from the federal level, state level, local level, teachers, principals, school board members, that all children really can learn. You know, we hear that a lot, but you know, in some kind of way, I feel in my heart a lot of people don't really believe that. And I think we have to just keep that on top of the table, just like he responds.
Those are two great questions. I'll throw it up open to the panel as our last questions. Jamie, go ahead. It might be good to have everybody comment on this just as we will work our way down and we'll end there.
I'll take the first question related to parental involvement. I think that's where, even in the challenging times of the implementation of all of these important reforms, we all have significant responsibilities. It's not the job of any one group, and so parents have a significant responsibility. And for groups like SCORE and for all of us, it's really about, parents have great aspirations for their children. They want great things, and so for all of us, we need to make sure we match those tools, and where those aspirations aren't there, we need to make sure that those connections are made clear and they have tools to make sure that their children are prepared for a successful day at school and to learn, and they're happy, and so we've got to do a job on our end to make sure that parents have the tools that they need. But I think it's critically important that parents have an accountability in this as much as all of us do.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think we also have to be realistic about what parental involvement means. And I think there's actually a difference between parental involvement and parental support. You know, I think when we were working at YES and now, I think some people have this idea of parents sitting in the back of the classroom cutting out gingerbread men and things like that. And that's not reality for a lot of our parents. They're working 2 and 3 jobs just to keep the family together. What we need from those families is support. We need them up at the school. We need them to be there. We need to make sure the messages that the kids are hearing at home about education and homework and college and workforce readiness, that those messages are aligned with the messages they're hearing in school. And I think if we can start there and be realistic about the difference between involvement and support, I think we'll set ourselves up for a little bit more success and not beat ourselves up so badly. As far as our second question, if we can figure that out, I mean, whoever does that's going to be the richest man in the world. I think that's just a tall order, getting all those interests aligned, and that's something that we're battling at every single day on behalf of kids, and I just think it's a constant work in progress.
I would just share that we, as an association at the state and national level, have resources available to teachers and people who work in schools to engage parents. And as Chris said, the emphasis needs to be not necessarily that we need parents to be in schools, but we need parents to understand. And I think many of our most challenged parents in these urban communities don't understand necessarily what they can do at home, how they can help their children. So it's a part of parental education as well. They want to do the right thing for their kids, but they're not always able or aware of what to do. So when we co-sponsored the Family School Community Summit here in Nashville last year, one of the things that opened my eyes was that schools are not always a friendly place for parents. And I could look at myself and my school situation and realize that there was some truth to that. So we can look at ways that the school community works more closely with the family communities and makes those relationships more profitable.
I'll take on the second question that you asked, and I really appreciate the question. The achievement gaps in Tennessee are staggering. The gaps between poor kids and non-poor kids, the gaps between African American kids and white kids are staggering and unacceptable. I think to the question of how do you get beyond just saying all kids can learn to actually believing it, one big step is having enough people doing the work who actually have done it. And for me, the reason why bringing Chris in to try to figure out how to work with our most troubled schools that truly are leaving kids behind every day, the reason that matters is because he's done it. And so when he says things like, I expect the schools that I oversee to be the best schools in the district, that's not some pie in the sky vision. It's because he actually had almost all first generation immigrant and first generation college attending kids, and 100% of them went to four-year colleges. And I think it's important that we have these exemplars across the state, that we have classrooms, schools, and whole districts that are closing achievement gaps, so that we can hold them up and say, it is possible. Not only is it possible, but it's happening right here. Not only is it happening right here, but there are concrete things that you can learn from these schools and from these communities that you can apply in other places. And so I think it's of critical importance. We cannot get where we want to go as a state unless we, deep in our hearts, believe that every kid in this state can learn.
I'll take the second one first. I think that's the battle that our country's facing right now. I will say that's by far the biggest challenge I face. There's far too many people who think that poverty is destiny, and give me lots of reasons why black and brown children can't learn. And these are people in education. And to other folks' points, what I desperately need are more and more proof points of schools that are 99% poverty, 99% minority, with 98% graduation rates and 95% of graduates going off to college. And we just have to sort of continue to put the lie, not talk about it, but demonstrate what students can do. This work is tough, it is hard, it is difficult, we need a whole set of wraparound services. But I can't tell you how many meetings I'm in, literally including yesterday at a forum like this, where an educator stood up and went on and on to me about why she wasn't quite sure we should offer algebra in 8th grade to poor children, and she wasn't quite sure if their brains could handle it. That was really her question. A forum like 1,700 people, much bigger than this. And this is a lifelong educator. And so that's reality. And I think we have to challenge that every single day. And again, I think you have a set of players in the state that if we can continue to demonstrate what's possible, it puts the lie in those stories. On parental engagement, I think it's really easy for us to blame parents. And I always try and look in the mirror and be very self-critical. And what are we really doing to open our doors? And GED classes, ESL classes, family literacy nights, potluck dinners, teachers and principals and social workers knocking on doors and going to homes and spending time with families. We have to do some things really differently. Parents, just as kids are stressed, parents are stressed in very different ways. We desperately need to bring them in. So I really challenge us to look in the mirror, figure out what we can do to create an environment where parents want to come in our doors and are welcome there. A lot of our poor parents, they had tough times in school. School wasn't a welcoming place for them. It's hard to get over psychological barriers. We had 11, 12 years of disappointment and not having a good time. That's a really hard one to overcome. So we have to really stretch ourselves to do that. I was trying to be a little controversial, just give you something to think about. I think 99.5% of parents we can do a much better job with, and we have to really do that. I do think there's a tiny percent of children where mom's on crack and dad is locked up and there isn't a parent or a grandparent or aunt to take them in. I think we need to think about some public boarding schools. And there's a small percent of children need to have them 24/7. And if we're serious about ending cycles of poverty and social failure, those children are simply not working. I think we need to think about a very different model.
Well, thank you. These were great questions, and thank you, panel. That was, for me, incredibly interesting. And I want two or three things. Before you clap, two or three things I want to say, and I'll finish up. First of all, Dr. Register and the whole MPS, particularly this school, thank you. We know this is a busy time, and we impose, but we're grateful. Number two, Secretary Duncan. I was thinking when he was talking, he has called me on a Friday night. He's called me on a Saturday afternoon. He doesn't have to care as much as he does, but he does. And I think because of that, I think we'll see the trajectory of education change in the country. I honestly believe that. The last point is this. Last week I was in Afghanistan, and as you look at that country and the myriad of issues they have, the most troubling is this. Only 20% of the people in the whole country can read. Okay? And you think, how are they ever going to compete on a in the competitive international world that we have today. What's true in the extreme is true in the degree. And if we want to compete, we have to be at the forefront of education. And the last point I'll make is this. Kevin was talking about the gaps between white kids and kids of color, the gaps between income levels, and he said the gaps are staggering. And I'll go further. Those gaps are immense. And if we want to change our state, that's what we have to address. So thank you all very much for being a part of this. We're grateful